Welcome to Brow Therapy, the podcast where the magic of beauty meets the raw, unfiltered stories of real life. I'm your host, Diana Yusufov, a brow artist turned accidental therapist, and every day behind the chair, I hear it all. From the highs of entrepreneurship to the chaos of life, the secrets of beauty, and all the juicy tea in between, nothing is off limits. Whether you're here for business insights, personal growth, or just a laugh, you are in the right place. Join me as I share the invaluable lessons I've learned and introduce you to the incredible people who have shaped my journey. Get ready for an inspiring ride filled with insights, stories, and expert tips. Let's dive in. All right, so welcome everybody to Brow Therapy. I am so excited to have one of my amazing clients on, and I've known you for a while now, Courtney, years, yes. Right? Years, yes. And have heard your journey with family and marriage and kids and all things surrogacy, and every time I see you, I'm always like, holy shit. You are a rock star, literally, truly. So I want people to hear your story. Yeah. And I find it so fascinating every time we're together on all things surrogacy and the things you tell me that I would have never, ever thought of. So I want you to just introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of a family background, and then we'll get into the why of surrogacy.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I think it's awesome that you're interested and want to share. Actually, interestingly enough, the first time that I saw you was post my first surro baby. Like 2 months after I had her, it was like my gift to myself.
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
Yeah,
that's right.
I searched and I was like saving all. I'm like, oh, her style's so good. I love it. So anyway, that's how we got here.
I loved it. I do remember that.
Yeah, so we're still connected by that journey actually. So interesting that here we are full circle, right? So I am a mom of two. Mm-hmm. I have an 8 and he's almost 9 actually, and a 7-year-old boy. Both. They're awesome. Yeah. I had really good pregnancies. I wasn't sick. I didn't have any of the regular kind of junk that goes along with pregnancy that a lot of people experience. So totally. I was super lucky.
Yes.
Although I didn't know it at the time, right? I was like, oh, my pregnancy was so fast. And my sister's like, a person that's not sick and doesn't go through all the crappy pregnancy things, that's what they say. Like, they're like, it's so easy. I'm like, okay.
It's rare to hear that. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. So big perspective on it where I was like, oh, okay. I guess I didn't realize I had it so easy. I never struggled with tracking anything. I never had to do ovulation stuff.
So you just got pregnant super easy.
Yeah.
Naturally and everything.
I didn't even know I wanted to have kids for sure.
Wow.
So one night was a little bit too much wine.
Uh-huh.
And the next, my son was only 7 months old and went to a Snoop Dogg concert and came home.
Yep.
And it was Snoop Dogg. And then the next thing we knew, I was pregnant again. So.
And how old were you when you had your first son?
Yeah, it was 29.
29.
And 30.
And 30. Oh my God. So really back to back. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it wasn't even the second time being so close. It wasn't difficult. Everything was great. And that kind of actually went into breastfeeding and stuff too. I did not realize the struggles that people have. I thought, oh, it's natural. Well, sure, it's natural, but it doesn't come naturally. It's very difficult. And I was really lucky on that front too. But I had watched people struggle. I was in some Facebook groups. So motherhood for me on that side was not the challenge that I had started to witness my friends going through.
Yes.
And that was where I, kind of started to think about surrogacy.
Wow.
So my boys were healthy.
Yes.
My labor and deliveries were good even. So.
Did you know anybody who's been a surrogate before? Or how did that seed get planted on surrogacy?
Yeah. So I have a good friend that's a midwife. And she had attempted to carry for, I think, a couple families.
Okay.
One for sure at least. And it didn't take, is what you'd say. Like the embryo didn't take. So she had gone through the whole process. She had done all the meds and transferred, and the baby didn't take. So she had told me about the agency. It's in Waterloo, Wisconsin. It's local. The woman that owns it is amazing. She does everything herself. She's been a surrogate 3 times herself.
Wow.
She's a mother of 3. I believe she was an embryologist. She was something in the field also, and now has her own agency.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's really good at what she does, matching and everything.
Is that who you worked with?
Yeah.
You did. So now How many times have you been a surrogate now?
So this is my 4th.
This
currently.
is going on 4 times. When I just met her and I was like, okay, this is your 3rd. And I'm like, holy shit, this is your 4th. So you are pregnant right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And
so
how?
I had heartbeat confirmation was last week.
Wow.
Tuesday.
Yes.
So I will be 8 weeks on Thursday.
Okay.
So that's actually kind of wild, not to go completely off topic right now, but
No.
when you transfer,
Yes.
the embryo, for me, each time has been 5 days old. When you transfer, because of where you're at in your cycle, you're actually 2 weeks and 5 days pregnant, like technically. So you have heartbeat confirmation just like 3 weeks later.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's
maybe 3.5 weeks, so the process is really long up front, which we obviously will talk about.
Yes.
But then once you're in it, you're like, whoa, everything's kind of just like wild. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And I really want to get into the prep and all the back end stuff that I think people forget that you have to do to prep your body before you even implant, right? But when you were talking through with the gal with the agency, did you know, like, for sure, you're like, I want to do this? Did you want any more kids personally for yourself, for you and your family? Or you're like, I have my 2 boys, they're healthy, they were great pregnancies, and now I want to do this for someone else?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I had never, because I didn't plan either one of my boys. I know how it works, right? But it's not like I was family planning or tracking ovulation or doing the things that, we're going along with, like, this is what I want in my life right now. It was perfect and it worked out great. I wasn't sure either way. I wasn't, one way or the other. But I started witnessing all of my friends struggling big time. I saw not just fertility issues and struggles, a lot of loss. And that was just ridiculously heartbreaking. And I had kids like a couple years, up to even like 5 years before people in my same group of friends.
Yes.
And almost every one of them was struggling.
Wow.
So it was really hard to watch when you have almost second trimester losses for some of them. So, I sat with it for a minute and was like, I can do this. I can help someone. They didn't need help. But I was like, I don't even get sick. I don't have any of these crazy things. Like, all the way through pregnancy was healthy. I can help someone. I'm sure there are people that need help, So then my friend that's the midwife was kind of giving me more information on the agency that she had gone through, and I was like, okay, I like that it's local and it's just this one woman that really is doing all these great things for all these great, these amazing families. And I reached out, I filled out an application, and they have to review everything. There's so much that goes into it. It's medical records of your labor and deliveries and pregnancies all the way through. And then you discuss, like, what any questions you have on the process and what's it's a big process, right?
Absolutely.
So after that, this is kind of like a crazy story. So every family's so different. And I think that through the process, that's the biggest lesson I've learned is that you can never assume anything about anybody. So I had met the first family that I carried for by chance.
Wow.
And they happened to also be going through the same agency, and then we happened to get matched.
So it just was meant to be.
I just met them, and they were looking right then with the same, out of all the places, all the people, all the times, all the things. So that's when I knew that, yes, for sure, this is what I want to do. Wow. I can't, there are certain things about each journey that I can't talk about, obviously.
Sure.
In this situation with this one, contract-wise, I can't say much more about it. But
totally.
The story with it was so obviously you're where you're meant to be and what you're meant to do right now. So I was like, yes, I had every reason to do it.
It's amazing. It's so amazing. And one thing you mentioned to me was that when you first started doing this, you assumed that it would be mostly people with having fertility issues. Yeah. But you've noticed that obviously that's a big part of it. Yeah. But what else did you realize once you kind of got into it and the people who were looking into surrogacy? Yeah,
so the majority that I've carried for has been same-sex marriage or same-sex couples.
Yeah.
Another was a health condition from childhood. So, when you talk about the enormous number of people though that do struggle with fertility, we know it's out there. Maybe they they're like, they've had enough. Their heart can't take anymore, and they're not trying to even have someone else try to carry. I don't, everyone's story, like I said, is so different.
Wow.
But what I've experienced when I've been matched, where Jessie at Pink and Blue is so good at matching.
Okay.
Well,
shout them out too
so
for
good.
Anybody who's thinking about or interested. We'll get more information on that. Yeah.
I mean, with 4 journeys with her, I've always had the best experience. She makes sure everything is taken care of, that everyone knows what's going on. That, I mean, you have questions, she's there. Like, it's amazing. And obviously it's a journey and a process that things out of your control can happen. And in those moments, I had a situation where I had a hematoma and I had just finished meds and I started hemorrhaging. And I'm like,
Holy
I
crap.
don't have any pain. Like, I don't know what's going on, but there is like a lot of blood. And I call her and we're chatting, and she's such like this calm everything, and she's got you. She's here for you. Keep me posted, all the things.
So she is there to be during the journey, to consult through it.
Yeah.
You have access to her at all times.
All times. She's just so knowledgeable and so supportive. You can't go wrong. Like, there are kind of these big box companies you maybe even see. Maybe I see it because it targets me on like Facebook,
For sure.
The ads that come up and all the things that they talk about, and obviously finances are like a huge piece of it, but also who knows where they're located? Who knows who you're dealing with? Are you getting the same person? I think that with Jessie, it's so personal and so it's just like to the heart of it, so I
especially when it's your first time. Now that this is your 4th, you've learned so much. But thank you for explaining that. I didn't even realize that you went with the same agency, because the part about like matching, it's like a matchmaker. Like, are you going to be a good fit for this couple or whoever it is that's looking to, like, so there's so much of the psychology of it. And when you have people you've had who have been out of state, out of town, and all that, so can you talk a little more about that, like how that works in general?
So the matching would be like nationwide, and people often ask, well, what are you matched on? I don't know exactly how Jessie does it. My guess would be it could be on anything that you put. So basically from the start, you fill out a profile. So you kind of think like, oh, dating profile, right?
Totally.
You're like, it's pictures
that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah, it is kind of.
Yes.
You're like, well, what is it about you? Where'd you go to school? What'd you go to school for? What do you do? What do you like to do? Pictures with your family. Like, what do you guys do? Like that kind of thing.
Because if you are carrying their baby and you are the day-to-day of what your lifestyle is, if you were a smoker in the past, or did you drink and you don't drink in your pregnancy, right? And then just like, I don't know what your sleep schedule is like. Like, do you eat fast food? Like, is that all that stuff that
in the profile portion, that won't all be in there, but it'll be like, do you have pets? Like, what do you do? Just lifestyle. What do you do in general for fun and work and play? How old are your kids? Like that kind of thing. And then later on, you do get more into the other stuff. But so you fill out the profile, you do the pictures, and in my 4 experiences, it's been Jessie says, I do have a family that I think you'd be a great match for. Are you okay with me sending their profile to you? And I would get to see it first. I think.
So you make that call before the family makes the call.
So I think I know because I've seen all the things like posts about it and things about it, that there are many more families looking for carriers, and there are people willing to, or I guess that know about carrying. I don't know. So yes, I would get their profile first, and and every time I've seen one, I'm like, they're lovely. It's like, so of course, like, how do you say no? You're like, oh, it's just like everything. And in there too, coming from a family, a lot of times is going to give the journey that they've gone to get to this point. There's a piece on mine that says, why do I want to do this? What makes you want to do something like this? So when the piece comes from them, though, that says how they got to that point, it can be really heartbreaking to read, where you're like...
That's a lot.
Yeah,
That's
it
a
is.
lot, yeah.
So that, it's a lot, especially to not have a perspective on it except for the good, and to feel that other people are going through that. So it's really a huge reason for me why that I would even think about doing it,
So your purpose is, for the most part, you're looking at this as a way to give to others in a sense of like, I know you and I talked about this. It's like, for me, like what I do, and it's like you're giving somebody, whether it's browse, you're spending the time with them and you're giving a piece of your art, making them feel better and hopefully leaving better than they came in. This is on another level of truly giving back.
Yeah, it's, I think, a way that I can make an impact and a difference that's like, it's going to last a lifetime in such a big way, right? Like, I look at my boys and I'm like, I think these are my humans.
I know, like you made that, like, that's
and look at how
wild.
cool they are. Like, they do this monster picture, or they, you know, this I love you mom thing, or it's just, okay, to be able to give somebody those little things, I think. It's obviously a big thing to do, but the little things are what I think really make it a thing. So, like, the day in, day out, when you see that they're little humans that actually operate on a level of communication with you too, and they say jokes that you'd never, the sense of humor, where's this come from? It's so good, you know? So
like, that's me.
Yeah, right, but it's amazing, it's true, like, okay. But I think about that in the future for the families. I'm like picturing, what is this gonna be like for them? The baby time's hard regardless, you know?
Wow.
But later in life, this whole sports or band or all the things that they get to do and experience then as a family.
So they get that whole lifetime experience, and you were able to be such a big part of that.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. So then going back to when, after you look at their profile and you're like, okay, I would love to be a surrogate for this family. Then what?
Jessie sends my profile to them.
Okay.
And if they're interested, if they're like, yep, this seems like a good match, then she'll reach back out to me and say they would love to chat with you. So if they're local, I've met in person with them. If they're out of state, then we Zoom, obviously. And it's usually like, I think the second family that I carried for, actually, we met just at Highland House in Mequon.
Okay.
And we sat for like 3 hours and just chatted, and it was so great. And I'm 5'2".
Yeah.
And we stand up to leave, and both parents stand up, and they're like 6'1" and 6'3". And I was like, so this was lovely, but I may reconsider. Like, this might be, unless you tell me it's like a shark that just grows to the size of their tank.
That's too funny.
Maybe it was a normal size. Everything was fine, but yes.
So funny. So what happens then if somebody is out of state? You Zoom initially, and then do you meet in person? Are all your appointments here when you deliver? Are you delivering? Do they come for the delivery? Like, how, I know that's a loaded question, but then what happens when someone's out of state and you get matched up?
Yeah, so it's, if you look at it this way, the embryo is theirs, so it's their fertility doctor.
Okay.
And the body is mine, so it's my OBGYN, you know?
Yeah.
So I couldn't be expected also to go into labor scheduled and get on a plane, right?
Yes,
so
yes,
I would
okay.
go there for transfer.
Okay.
So actually, the first 2 times I carried were local families, but I went down to Illinois for transfer. That's where their fertility clinics were. And then the next time was out on the East Coast.
Okay.
And then this time also was on the East Coast.
Wow.
So I just go for a couple days.
Okay. And we'll get into a little bit of the
Yeah.
finances, but that's something that's covered by the couple and comes out of their budget for this, right?
As a carrier, there's nothing out of pocket for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the travel expenses, even maybe a per diem for food, anything that you can think of, like when you're out there. And then obviously it's their fertility doctor. I'm going, that's something that's taken care of. Their, you know, embryos are there and frozen and kept and stuff.
Okay.
So after.
Head out, if you head out for the transfer and then you come home.
I just come home and that's it.
Okay, well, I'm sure that's not it.
It's kind of crazy. It's
but
so anticlimactic.
what about, I don't know about all that. So does the family, my biggest question is like, if I'm asking someone to be a surrogate for me, and I feel like a lot of people probably have a little bit more, are just more anxious about the control of things. Like, do they tell you, like, can you not eat this?
Yeah, so that's a good question.
Can you not ride a bike? Are there things that, again, there's so many variables on things, God forbid, that can go wrong.
Always, yeah.
So are you in constant communication with them? Again, I have so many questions on that. But yeah, what can they tell you, if anything?
Okay, so after everything is good, you yes, we want to match. I'll just rewind a little bit to get to that main thing.
Yes.
So yes, we want to match. We're good to go. There's a psych eval, sometimes for the family too.
Can you talk about the psych eval?
Yeah.
Because I think this is fascinating, and what would be red flags that wouldn't allow a surrogate to be?
I don't know. So it's the Minnesota something. It's MMPI 3, I think, or they just changed it. The initial one I took like 6+ years ago, the first time I carried, was nearly 600 questions.
Wow.
And it's basically like the same 3 or 4 questions, just worded differently. So, and they're very basic questions. I can't even think of what they are. I think I had questions about smoking cigarettes in there even.
Yeah. There any like situational questions where like, if you were in this type of situation, would you do this and that, or?
I don't think, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
They're pretty quick, like simple questions.
Sure.
You know?
It's like all those psychology tests that ask the same thing in different ways, and you're just like, oh, again,
like
yes, seriously.
So now they changed it, and I took it mid last year maybe, and it was about half the length.
Oh,
yeah, so that was kind of nice. To
condensed it, yes, so not deterred people from doing it
but
from
I don't
just the
think
psych test.
Had to do it this time.
Okay.
And I haven't had to do it every time. So I think their fertility clinic this time wanted it.
Okay.
Don't quote me on it, but it could. I believe that's what the situation was, which I'm happy to. Like, I'm not, this is totally fine.
Of course.
So you do this. I need to get records released from my OB for the whole pregnancy, for labor and delivery. And then I have to get cleared by their fertility clinic. So I have to actually have an ultrasound that shows that all the parts are conducive to putting an embryo in,
Yeah.
And then after all of that's cleared, they're like, okay, we've got the green light.
Okay.
And then the fertility clinic will let me know a calendar. This part, then they've got you on birth control to kind of control your period.
Pinpoint when the inception
The cycle,
date is.
yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
So they would take me off, wait for a period to start, and then they'd start me on a specific med. And I typically start on something called Lupron, and you inject it into your stomach.
So you do that yourself?
Yeah.
How many times?
That one was, I think, less than a month. And it just kind of stings a little bit in your tummy. It's a very skinny, almost like insulin needle.
Okay.
And as much as I know about it, it blocks testosterone. I know there are other uses for it, but that they had. And then shortly after that, I started estrogen and a prenatal, get things going.
So you're prepping your body how naturally a woman would get pregnant to make sure that your body is
hormone-wise, like where you're at in the cycle,
to keep this embryo and have the pregnancy to full term.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you start the big dog meds, and that's what's going to make it really a space that an embryo wants to stay. So you start something called progesterone and oil. Okay. And it's previously I had one that was sesame oil. Maybe they all are like that. I know I had like a little reaction once, and they're like, we can give you one in a different kind of oil if it's an issue. Okay. And it's thick, and the needle is like nearly 2 inches long. Oh. Yeah, it sucks.
My God. Are you also doing that yourself? And how many times?
So one journey I did 90 days, every day.
Every day with a 2-inch needle?
Yeah, it's about 2 inches, maybe just a little
and
under.
This is while, before inception?
And after.
Because I've never been pregnant before, so progesterone has to be like higher, right? For you to carry full, okay.
And the estrogen is just a tiny little pill that you take 2 times a day.
Okay.
But the progesterone is like the big dog stuff. Wow. So you have to do it intramuscularly, and so I have to inject in like the top outer quarter of my butt.
Glute. Yeah. Oof. But
so I've got little knots every day, and it's thick, so you have to like kind of massage it after, and I'm like very sore right now. Yes, I'm like I was. So
you're in the process of doing this.
Yes, I'm in the countdown because I only have to do it. The 27th is my last day.
Oh my gosh.
And that I think I was counting, and it was actually under 60 days this time. I've always been at a different fertility clinic because it's who the family chooses, and I've always carried for different families. Right. So every doctor's or clinic's protocol or med regimen is different, you know. Mm-hmm. So everybody's got. Sometimes there's a progesterone suppository at some point before transfer. I've had estrogen patches that I had to start at 2 and then go up to 4 and then wean down to 2 and then so it's been different every time. But what's consistent and seems to be the non-negotiable are the progesterone and oil injections.
Great.
The worst part, yeah.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it's a doozy. I mean, the med schedule is rigorous. It's like, it's tough. I'm like, oh, so tired going to bed. And then I think, oh, great, that means when I wake up, I get to do my next shot. You know, I'm like, oh. Yeah. But I think the important part in this is keeping the perspective. Okay. As anything in life. One of the jobs I had back in college, we always said keep the pee. So I just could like keep the pee. Okay, it's temporary. Mm-hmm. It's like the outcome is way worth this tiny little thing. It's no big deal. And it's going to be over before I know it. And then I have a normal pregnancy from 10 weeks on. I'm not injecting, I'm not anything.
It really is that pre-prep and that first few months or couple months, right? Yep. And then you are like, okay, this is the norm.
Yep. And then I'm a normal. I've already been released to my OB as of heartbeat confirmation last week. Okay. But I have to continue the meds, which you're like, can I just be released? But you can't. This is just part of it. And you know this signing up. So as far as what I can and can't do then, like food-wise and stuff. So when we are going through the process, after everything's good, I have a psych eval.
Yep.
Then the record's released. Then we do the contract. So the contract will list all the things, even communication. Okay. Yeah. Right. So it's interesting. Yeah.
It makes sense because if somebody's just constantly just like, even if they're like, hey, just checking in on you, just seeing how you're feeling, how you're doing, what is the protocol normally?
Right. And you want to be on the same page and know that you've got, maybe not the same style of communication, but that you've got the same expectations, right?
Yes.
So we talk about it up front, what it's going to be like during the process and after. So not only do we have it in the contract, but specifically this time even, we spoke, I not only have the psych eval, but I also have to talk to a therapist. And
prior?
Yeah, so
like once or twice?
Actually did twice, because once was with the family. And once was with them. And really, she was just asking about me and what were the specifics? How many embryos did we agree to transfer? How many times did I agree to do IVF if one didn't take? Those types of details that could be difficult to overcome if there were to have, something go wrong.
Totally.
So she then talked to all of us together and went back over them to confirm that we are all on the same page with these big ticket items.
And this is a therapist.
Yeah.
Is there an attorney there too, or
not
this
there?
Is okay? So you have a verbal agreement with the therapist, and then obviously it's transferred over.
We have to pass that, quote unquote, pass that portion.
Right. If that's not agreed upon.
Yeah.
See, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Like sometimes to even that's why what your friend does. What was her name? Who owns the agency?
Jessie. Yeah.
Jessie. It's so important for a match. Again, is this going to be compatible?
Yes.
Are their personalities even going to be? If somebody is really like super lax or more type A, like. How does that
work? And maybe you need that for balance. Yes. Like, she's so good at it.
That's huge.
In my experience.
So that's why you really do need that. And somebody, who has the skills to do that.
Yes. And the knowledge, she's done it herself even. So she knows the process. She's not just kind of sitting back saying, I'm sure the shots aren't awesome, but she'll be like, I feel you, like it stinks, but you're home stretching, That
understanding and also just like validation is amazing.
Yeah. So the contract will talk about things like, I don't know. I always give examples like let's say the family you're caring for is kosher, and to them that's like super important that you don't have pork or that you keep kosher.
Yep.
You're not going to match with someone who's not willing to keep kosher, doesn't keep kosher. Like that's just like kind of my extreme example of
That's a great example.
It's just how it goes. Or it will lay out in there how much caffeine you can have. Although it also lays out in there that you follow your doctor's instructions on things like that. So obviously your doctor's not going to say, sure, a pot of coffee a day is great. They're going to say the cup is great. Yeah. But it's still, oftentimes in my contracts will say a cup of coffee, and no energy drinks, and limit your fast food. I've not ever had anything extreme. I don't do fast food anyway, but I've never had anything extreme that's been like, you only have to eat organic and cold pressed juices from this time. I've never had anything like crazy.
Can it be like that?
Yeah.
Like people can do that, but let's just say they could also, like, that's expensive. Can the family provide that to you? Like it could be any type of level depending on
I'm sure
with the matches and what people are willing to do or get paid to do. So
I'm sure that people could say, we are looking for someone that's willing to do X, Y, Z. This is what is important to us, like what they put in their body or what products they use or, just overall what I would want for myself or how I live. I want that for, I'm sure. And then you could be matched on that. I wouldn't doubt that I think about like celebrities, I'm sure that there's some like crazy
Right. I'm just thinking about, all the things that they probably request from people. But, but for more a normal type day to day. And sometimes you don't know who you're being a surrogate for, right? Is that also?
Mine's always been an open thing.
Yours has been open.
Never experienced something. There was a time where Jessie had said, I have a higher profile couple for you and I can't let you know who it is right now. Okay. So that type of thing, but I would have eventually known.
You would have
Unless
known.
Maybe sometimes you don't. I would imagine that sometimes people are like, we want it to be completely confidential.
Yes.
And you would, as a surrogate, have to be okay with that. And actually, technically, I'm a gestational carrier. So I'm an oven, like I'm a gestational carrier. It's not my egg, and I could never use my own egg. That would be too much of an emotional attachment for me where I just couldn't do it.
So that's a great question that I was just thinking about. Has there been a case for you personally where after your delivery that it was the attachment was just really hard to let go of? And how fast does that happen?
No.
No.
For me, there hasn't.
So this is really, well, I don't want to say transactional, but more so you're detached from that, knowing it's not your child. You've carried the child, but you're comfortable knowing that that's not.
So I can compartmentalize it because none of it was natural. So the process itself medically isn't natural. You know, I even at some of the transfers, I watched on a screen, a TV screen, the baby coming out, or the embryo coming out of a petri dish, you know. So they have to make it all happen, and I have to with meds.
Yep.
And we had the contract, and we had, so none of it was just like,
so it really does
wine,
become transactional in that sense. In that
way I have to compartmentalize it.
Right.
The only time I actually got emotional was after the first baby. And the family didn't want the breast milk. And I knew so many people struggling. And I was like, all these people that really want this, that I'm just producing like crazy, and now I'm trying everything to dry it up. I felt guilt, like the heaviest guilt, and probably hormones too, you know?
For sure.
So then I felt really sad. I cried. I was like really sad about that piece, just knowing how so many women struggle.
So then if you're delivering for someone that is out of state and they would want to have the breast milk, how does that go about?
So the first two families were local,
Yep.
and the second two being out of state.
Yep.
The second family that was local, I did pump for 5 weeks for them, and they would just pick up or I'd drop off, easy, right?
Okay.
The second one, they really valued the colostrum before they flew home, so they specifically stayed in town until my milk came in, actually, and they were just north of me in a hotel, so they could easily pick it up, or I dropped it off even at their hotel for them. And then once my milk came in, they felt comfortable flying because the colostrum's just so jam-packed of all the antibodies and good things.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I did that and then had to dry up. Now that I just kicked my milk into gear, which it wasn't so bad that time. And now this family, it's a possibility. Again, it's in the contract.
Okay.
So you'd say what that looks like if, so it doesn't specifically say, yes, this is what they want. It says it's on the table that we both agree. If we both agree to it, great.
Awesome.
And if so, this is what it costs, basically, you know, so it's a lot of work. Pumping is like, it's insane. It's so much work, and dating and bagging and freezing and organizing, like storing and stuff. So that piece is a lot of work, but it makes me feel good because I'm like, my body's making it for a reason, and I would love for the baby to be able to get the benefits from it.
Now, Courtney.
Yeah.
I think people need to understand that you also do have a full-time job.
Oh, I have 3 jobs. Yeah. Yeah.
And 2 children of your own.
Yes.
So do you get any leave? Like, obviously, I don't know if it would be even like a maternity leave, because your body still has to recover. Or you're just like, I know your personality too, and you're just like, go, and back to work. But obviously there is something there for you. Like, is it paid like vacation days? What do you do?
That's a really good question. And I'm also a single mom, right? And so taking the time off is not really an option. Yeah. But I happen to have I got really lucky with my job and my bosses. Okay. So I work from home, and I can just sit on the couch with my computer, or I've had really great recoveries postpartum anyway, being my 6th.
So you really are just meant for this.
Yeah, I guess.
That's amazing.
So I'm happy to do it because I feel good after. But when I don't take any leave because I don't really need to. Okay. Because I can just work on the couch with my computer, you know. Amazing. So if I needed it, yes, of course they would give it to me. Okay. But I haven't needed it, and I'm fine just like plugging away. What else am I going to do? Just sit there. I don't have a baby to take care of. You know what I mean? So excuse me, that would be one thing. I had to like care for the baby, and I'm doing all the things. But even if I'm pumping, I hook up a hands-free thing, and I just keep working. And you can still
do it. And I feel like for you, it is such a mindset thing, you know. And like you said, you know that you're set on this journey that you're gonna go on, and you're gonna do whatever it takes. And you've always been, just from me knowing you, just such a strong personality, a strong woman who's wanting to help others. So it's just, there's a bigger reason for all this. So one more question about, well, probably a lot of questions, but when you are delivering, is this part of the contract? Like, does the couple or the family ever, they're with you during the delivery?
So that's talked about. You're right. It's in the contract. Actually, you know what? Maybe it hasn't been actually in the contract, but we've discussed it. Where it's always been left up to me in terms of comfort level. Okay. My opinion on it is, I've had that moment for myself with my boys, and there is nothing like it. Nothing in your life is like the moment that, one, you're in labor, knowing that you're going to have a baby soon. It's inevitable. You can't stop time. You can't make it go backwards. And I've always said, it's my favorite part, and people are like, that's crazy. Even one of the intended moms that I cared for, she was like, that is actually psycho to say that. And I'm like, no, it's the world stops. You go into labor, the world stops. You could actually hand your coworker, your boss, anybody, a flaming pile of shit, literally here, and they would be like, thank you, I will take that. Please give that to me. It's amazing. And then
wow.
I mean, I love labor and delivery in general. And then I always say to like be a fly on the wall to watch this family. Obviously, I'm a little more of a participant.
Yes, definitely.
But to be able to watch them, the last time I can picture it all in my head even, sitting on the hospital bed still right after delivering, and they cleaned baby up, and the dads were sitting on the couch to my left, and I'm like, how do I not sob, like, watching this? They were glowing. They were just, it was the most amazing thing watching them with the baby.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh.
I can't believe this. Like, just
and
so.
you helped create this, and.
Yeah, and I get to like have the experience that nobody else gets to just sit and see this moment.
100%.
So, I think caring for so many different types of families, and I've also, another kind of cool thing is the first 3 that I carried for, I was a sibling journey. So they had a different carrier for their first child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and for various reasons, they didn't, go with the other carrier.
Yes, or the other carrier just
decided
to not. So, question in regards to carriers: is it harder for, let's just say, a woman who is single, maybe doesn't want to be in a relationship, wants a baby, and wants to find a surrogate? Is it harder for her to do that on her own? Do you know that possibly part of the journey?
I think it's equal for anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, you go and apply. I will actually touch on that from my perspective, though, because I was married the first journey that I did, and then after the next 3, I was a single mom, and the number one question that people would ask right away is, what's your support system? And I'm like, better than when I was married.
Right.
I'm like, it's
totally
amazing.
situational in that sense. Exactly.
Yeah. So, and I don't need a lot when it comes to that type of thing. I've got doctors and nurses. Like, I do the thing. I'm healthy. I stay healthy. I do the things I'm supposed to do. So it's not like this super, I need to lean on someone all the time for these things. So when I go into labor and delivery, I'm like, I got to do it. I have to do it by myself anyway. So I'm like, as long as the doctor's here, I'm good,
You are amazing. And if you don't mind, I'd love to touch on your first 2 pregnancies, which were a little bit easier than your third, and how that one went a little bit differently.
Yeah, so the first one, perfect. And I've never had a baby before 40 weeks. I just cook them.
Again, she's meant to be
I
doing
know,
it.
I'm like, could you cut me a little break here? I've got a friend that's had 4 babies and 37 weeks like clockwork.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I know, but then you see women at like 38 on, and it's like, oh my goodness. I know you do feel for them, and I'm just like, oh man.
It sucks. It's especially like September babies. Those, I had 2. That was the worst. Just too hot.
Oh my gosh.
So
yes.
bad.
Yes.
It's the worst. So May, my first son was May, and that was perfect.
Yeah.
And then I had a June,
the summer.
my second surro baby. So the second surro baby, the only complication was that hematoma, which apparently can be more common with IVF.
Okay.
It also hit a deer, or the deer hit me, actually.
That's right.
It's factual. The deer hit me. And it hit the front corner and triggered the airbags on the sides to go off and the seatbelt to lock up. So, but I hadn't even had heartbeat confirmation yet. So
that was early on.
Yeah, so baby was super low. But I'm like, in my head, that's probably why I had the hematoma later. I don't know. Who knows? We'll never know, right?
Yep.
And then the third, it was great. It was a perfect pregnancy. Same. All the way through, and then I hit 40 weeks, and I started swelling really bad. And this was I had the baby December of 23.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was swelling so bad. Like, I was 20 pounds up in 2 weeks.
Whew.
I looked like Nutty Professor. If you've seen the movie, like my ankles, my feet.
I think you showed me a picture from what I recall of your feet, and I was just kind of shocked. I was
They'd jiggle on top when I walked.
Oh my God,
my
that's
boyfriend at the time was like, he's like, I thought you were just like exaggerating. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, they're like jiggling when I walk, and he's watching me walk through the kitchen. So it was not good. So it was the weekend then, and then Monday comes, they call me, you need to come in Tuesday for an appointment. And going in, my blood pressure was like ridiculously high. My OB, she's so great. She's like, so like, did you have anything else you needed to do today? And I'm like, why? I know why, but I'm like, I have a bag in the car. I just need to coordinate somebody to get the boys from school. One of my best friends right here, went and grabbed the boys from school and had a sleepover with them, and they loved it. Aww. So I then, she knows me well too, because I was terrified of being induced. My body just did it.
Never had to be induced.
Nothing.
Okay.
No C-section, no induction.
Yep.
So I was like, oh man. So she goes, I'm going to break your water, and I'll give you 2 hours. And I'm like, okay, awesome. But my blood pressure was so bad.
Oh my
gosh. With the emergency meds, they were giving me like a bag of fluids, whatever the med was there, and pills every 20 minutes. Wow. And all of a sudden someone comes in with all this padding, and they're padding my bed. I'm like, what's happening? They're like, you're high risk to have a seizure. I'm like, what? I think when I looked over, I was like 180 over 130 something.
Wow.
It was so bad.
Oh my
and I thought,
goodness, that's so
we just
scary.
Need to get the baby out.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it's actually like so bad for me. I thought it's bad for I didn't know enough about it to be super panicked at that point.
Yeah.
I just kind of knew I felt like crap. And then after a little bit, she came in. So it was like, she gave me like 2.5 hours. And obviously I'm monitoring everything on me. She had given me magnesium. So that's supposed to help with like the fact that you could seize or have a stroke. And it's miserable.
Wow.
That was the
worst. Magnesium.
The magnesium is like out of body.
So what is happening to you physically once this is
burning from the inside out? It feels like, and then as it went on, so basically you have it. You have to be on it all through labor and delivery, and then once you have the baby, 24 hours after. I'd imagine that's standard. I don't think that's just like the protocol there. So 24 hours after, and I was like hallucinating, and yeah, it was so bad. I thought that the housekeeping girl that came in smothered me with my pillow in my sleep. And again, my boyfriend at the time was there, just wonderful support. It was amazing.
Yes.
I was seeing him in the corner, just standing, staring at me in the dark, sitting in a chair, sitting, like staring at me, over there, all over. He was sleeping. He was laying there sleeping. So it was the worst.
So, and did you have a fever? Like, do you feel like did that have anything to do with it? Or?
I don't think I had a fever. No. Med-wise and just like your body doing the things, I had thrown up a couple times, like just felt junky, but the magnesium in general just makes you feel like crap. So it's a muscle relaxer.
Right.
So I wasn't allowed to walk. And the only way I would contract is if I moved my hips on the bed. And I'm not going to self-induce. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to put myself through that pain of, making a contraction happen. So
oh my God.
I didn't have a choice. So it's like she broke my water to get things going. But the magnesium was like trying to chill everything out. So it was just counteracting each other. Wow. So I did have to get the Pitocin. Okay. And I was like, well, if I'm so afraid of an induction, I was like, I would please like the epidural first. And they're like, no problem. So I get the epidural, and the induction was fine. Labor and delivery was fine. I did one contraction, and the baby was out. He was the tiniest baby that I had.
Okay.
He was out. He was 3 days past his due date and still itsy bitsy. And I just felt like crap. It was just the magnesium though. Everything else was so great and so good. But I also felt like I wasn't totally present with it because the magnesium my face was hot. Wow. And then I started using ice packs on my eyes, and they had fibers, so my eyes, I looked like Quasimodo. It was Andrew came out of the bathroom, he's like, whoa. I'm like, what, is it bad? It's that bad.
And that says a lot too for the guy that you were dating at the time to be so supportive of this. Knowing that you're having somebody else's baby.
Yeah.
And to go through this pregnancy with you, obviously you have 2 kids. Did he have kids at all? No. So he's been a dad to, whatever your kids, I assume, half the time or whatnot. And so he was very supportive.
Super. He knew when we first started dating
that I was going to be transferred. I remember you were telling me you were planning to do this, right? And then you met or kind of started dating him, and he was on board.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Never been married, no kids. He didn't know. And he was like the best. In the delivery room, he was the best. Oh, throughout the whole pregnancy, everything. Same thing. Second time, the mom was like, We had the best surrogate and the best birthing coach ever, and they were talking about Andrew. So.
Oh my gosh! Did he ever want kids of his own?
No,
he didn't.
No, he just is just a good human and knows, how to be supportive in that way, and so he was. He actually asked his brother that has kids and his best friends that have kids, what should I do and what shouldn't I do? So it was
that's really sweet. It's nice. It's nice to see that because I can see that a lot of men would probably be.
It's a very, I don't want to say weird situation, it's very unique.
It's unique,
And imagine dating now. I was just recently divorced, just over a year before I started dating him. It was a year and a couple months. I started dating him, and I had already had it planned. I had started meds and everything. A couple months later, I was going to be transferring. And he's like, cool. And I've got 2 little kids. I'm just recently divorced. Just moved out on my own. I'm about to be pregnant with somebody else's baby.
Wow. Yeah, that says a lot. That says a lot.
Big
So
time.
super, super cool. So then after delivery, you delivered a healthy baby. You went through a lot physically at the end. After all of that, you were still not done.
So it's so funny because the anesthesiologist and all the nurses are all coming in and they're saying, well, you know that preeclampsia is due to the sperm that's involved. And I was like, it's always gotta be. I'm doing all the work. I'm doing all the, it's gotta be a dude, right?
Wow.
Well, I talked to my OB and she's like, there's really not a lot of anything to back that up.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, well, everybody else is saying there is, so I'm going with that. And so, I hadn't had it for the 4 before. So I'm like, I had it for this one, and it felt right to do it again. It was terrifying because I'm like, what? And when I went home, my blood pressure was still struggling.
It was
so
still
then I was
high.
going to double dose 3 times a day.
Jeez.
But they say it stops. Give yourself a couple weeks to a month, and it's done. It goes back down.
Okay.
And it did, and I've been perfectly fine. Just the other day on my heartbeat confirmation, I was like 90-something over 60-something. So it went.
So that wasn't a precursor for you for this next time that they were like, no, you can't do it again.
It's potential always, right?
Always a potential.
But it doesn't mean that your risk is doubled now because you already had it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how old are you now?
38.
38. And then what did they say for the most part, how long can women go to or be a surrogate for normally?
40-ish.
40-ish.
I've heard up to 45 even.
Wow.
So I think it depends on probably a fertility clinic's, guidelines and
Sure.
what they want to see.
Sure.
But to keep in mind that if you're a traditional surrogate and using your own egg, that's very different than being a gestational carrier.
Okay.
That I could be 40, but the egg could be 22.
Interesting.
That they're using to make the embryo. So when you talk about the things that happen as your eggs, I don't know all the science, or obviously not a doctor, but deteriorate.
I'm sure
over
you know
time,
a lot of that too now that you've done this.
Just like what I've heard through time, but as you get older and they start to quality wise not be top notch like maybe they had been 10 years prior.
Okay.
The things can happen, right? That maybe other chromosomal things,
Sure.
So which also a lot of that stuff will be in my contract. What happens? So we talk about. I don't know if you want to get into this.
I do. I think this is so fascinating.
So selective reduction, for specific things that can be kind of triggering for some people, but a conversation happens about those situations like maybe Down syndrome and things like that, or multiples.
Oh, gosh.
Let's say all of a sudden there are 4 and you put in 1, which the doctors that I've always had experiences with at these fertility clinics, it's very responsible. No one's putting in. I've only had 2 embryos put in ever, tops.
Okay.
And 1 took. Each time it's been a single. And none have ever split.
Okay.
That's not to say they can't,
Sure.
obviously,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But let's say there's 4.
Yes.
Does a family want, you've come to this point and now rely on science, and everyone has their own opinions on where they stand in this matter, obviously, and it's so touchy. But also, what if something is seriously wrong? Or the risk on my own body. What is 4
your
babies
own
mean?
health? Yes.
Yeah, and how can I show up then for my own kids too? So there's another layer of kind of.
Oh my God, I'm just sure there's so many little things that you need to discuss prior to moving on and doing this. So then you guys talk through that within the contract and whatnot. Amazing. I want to ask, which probably a lot of people are curious about too, and you obviously can't share all the details, but you get paid for this. This is a form of a job for you too. I mean, it's a lot of work. So what can most people on average, if they're interested in surrogacy, like what is the range that they get paid, and how do you get paid? Is it a lump sum?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
So that kind of like speaks to a couple things that I didn't know about surrogacy going into it, right?
Yeah.
So one was the med schedule. I didn't know it was so rigorous.
Okay.
And two is like, well, how does this work? You know, I mentioned, well, I don't know if I mentioned when we were recording actually, but human trafficking and things that I was interested in before.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
No one's paying you for a baby, right? No one's paying you for a human. We're talking about risk on your body and the work that goes into it and your appointments and like the time and all the stuff that is part of this huge process,
Yep.
So you agree on a dollar amount, and Jessie actually on her website has a really cool section that talks about like what could an intended family expect to spend, what would their out-of-pocket cost be, and I think it says between 100 and 150.
Okay.
And then as far as a first-time surrogate, it's typically Wisconsin-wise between 25 and 35,000.
Okay.
As you go, you're more experienced. You do another journey. I don't know what the reasons are for your increase. I guess for me, I've always thought that I've shown that I could follow the med schedule and go to the appointments. Like I followed the things, in the
So you have a track record, you know, and like, experience, and your quality of everything kind of goes up from there. Mm-hmm. Can you set the number?
Oh yeah, so that's how it starts. So
okay.
You, as the surrogate, when you're doing the same time that you fill out your profile, you do, which I think she just calls it a fee schedule, actually.
Okay.
And it's got some, kind of going back to that whole transactional thing, it has some icky parts on it that you have to think about because they can happen. So there might be a price tag on loss of reproductive organs or, invasive procedures, things like that, where these are possibilities.
All the things that
risk.
Unfortunately can go wrong, and can't even imagine how many.
Yeah. And then you'll put your base. And then you might add some things in, like maternity clothing, or prenatal massage or chiropractic, things that you'd do for yourself, even as a mother carrying,
or that you wouldn't do for yourself, but you would want to have done, taken care of for while you're pregnant.
This is your third now, and last time your body could have really used it.
Yes. As you get older too, it's harder on your body, obviously. So. Okay,
so you'd set that in there, and multiples. Let's say it did split. Well, then there's going to be a little bit more added to the base fee because it's a bigger risk. It's more appointments. I mean, it's a lot more monitoring, and then it gets sent to them, and they're going to negotiate. They have an attorney, I have an attorney, and we'll negotiate. And the attorneys in Wisconsin that I've worked with are so great. I always work with the same guy. Okay. So great and so knowledgeable. And in my county, anytime I have to go to parentage court. And basically that's to say, I guess cover both sides, to say I don't have any rights to this baby at any point in their future, but also I don't have any responsibilities or liabilities. So I can't,
during or after?
After. Once the baby's born, this is not my baby, and we're recognizing that.
Yeah, so there's just that cutoff.
So, and they ask questions even like, is there any reason for you to believe that this baby is actually your biological material?
Okay.
Or, I'm trying to think of what, are you under duress? That, they're asking like big questions, but making sure. And then, I forgot I was going to go with that.
So the contract, I feel like these are like hefty contracts.
Oh,
like there's just
30 pages.
30 pages.
Yeah, 30,
to go through all that. So price wise.
Yeah.
So after you've had experience, and now like you said, you kind of set the price.
Yeah.
And they will go back and forth and negotiate all that. Has it usually been a pretty easy process of negotiation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Big time. Because I think that Jessie is very knowledgeable on everything too, so she can look at things and say, this is the norm for this type of, thing, or that is not going to work here. That's going to be like a little above everything.
Yeah.
So I think when you see the ads, or at least like I said, I see the ads that pop up there.
Yeah,
like,
you
can
get
make
all that.
$65,000.
Yes.
Like, no.
It's usually not the case.
It's not.
No.
Yeah, not in my experience anyway.
Yeah.
But it has, it does increase each time.
Okay. Have you heard of anybody who's gotten paid like a six-figure?
I haven't.
You haven't?
No.
I'm just curious how like celebrities or people who do that, like what do they You know what I mean? Do
Yeah,
they? But
for
again,
sure.
sometimes I think they don't know. Like if you're caring for someone, maybe initially
Maybe
you
they
don't know. So
Yeah.
you negotiate the terms, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, oh, I'm carrying.
J-Lo's or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Have you, speaking of that, I was watching a reality TV show. I'm not even going to say what it is
Okay.
because everyone's going to judge me for it. Just kidding.
No one
But
will.
I think it was Khloe Kardashian who was saying that she had her first baby girl, and then her second was through surrogacy. And I love how transparent she was. And she was like, as much as I love this child, I didn't have the same connection
Interesting.
with her son, Tatum, I think his name is. And have you ever, I don't know what communication you've had with prior clients, if I can call them clients, afterwards, have you heard anything about that? Or if it's like a husband and a wife, a man and woman having that baby, and they're like, okay, this is our child.
Right.
It's, whether it's a sperm and egg. Has anyone ever mentioned that? Like the connection just wasn't there?
No one has, and my first thought is because they haven't carried before, right?
So
they haven't had
okay.
the experience to it. I think that's probably where she's coming from.
Because
Would
she
be my
has,
guess.
that makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense because she did carry, and it is just a different experience.
You don't know.
Yeah.
I know one of the families loved to see, like, the baby would have hiccups, and you could see my stomach going, or when it was kicking. Of course, the second that you go to film, they stop.
It's not
the
there.
baby stops.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
It was like just crazy, like acrobatics or parkour in there for like 2 minutes, and I try to get it. They stop right away. So they loved to see all of that stuff. And,
Wow.
And of course, I'm like so happy. I would love to look at your baby. It's like doing crazy stuff, and there's like a full-grown baby
So
now.
cool. So that's in the contract. Like they can, based on the communication-wise, like you guys set that boundary. Like they can FaceTime you, call you. Are you usually pretty open? Like what's your boundary with that? Like are you okay talking to them? Do you send them updates? Is there a limit to that?
Yeah. So I am always open to whatever they want because like I was saying before, I've had my own journey and my own experience, and I want this to be as much of theirs as it can be.
Yeah.
I want them to experience as much of it as they want. If it's harder for them to be there, I'd understand.
Yeah.
If they'd rather wait until after the 20-week appointment to know that everything is, good and going really well, I would get it. I haven't experienced it that way. The first two families being local, they came to a lot of appointments with me, a lot. Mm-hmm. And that was awesome. I'm like, this is great because I feel like it's me reporting back, but how much, better is it that you can be here? So when they've been out of state, then I'll FaceTime them. Okay. So they can actually see the ultrasound and hear the heartbeat, and it's much more special that way. But then also, the hiccups and stuff like that are fun too, if I can capture it.
So now this being your fourth pregnancy, I don't know if you can say yes or no yet, but do you think this will be your last?
Yeah, so I don't know. Last time, I must have told people yes, that it was my last because everyone's like, you said, I play soccer and I play on a couple women's teams.
Yeah.
And this one whole team of women is like, you said, and I'm like, I did? Like, are you sure?
Pregnancy brain, I guess.
I guess, literally, it's true, it does.
It is a thing.
But I don't know. I think that it's like when people say, well, do you want more when you're still pregnant,
Yes,
you're like, oh
yes,
my God.
exactly.
Right now, in the thick of doing the shots, and I'm just so sore for some reason.
Yeah.
I want to be like, no.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I'm kind of like, it depends, right? I think that there are a couple of reasons that I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
so
you're 38.
Really
you're 38 now. Mm-hmm. And then when you do deliver, will you be 39? No,
I just turned 38.
You just turned
last month,
38.
a couple
Oh,
weeks
okay.
ago, actually,
Well, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Yes.
So
and
I deliver in October.
Technically, if all goes well, hopefully everything is smooth for you this time. It's a possibility that you could do it again.
Yeah.
With the time frame and the price.
Yeah,
or the
as long as it's good. Yeah, there is a possibility.
Wow.
Yep. So that would be 7 pregnancies though. You can ask my mom. She'd tell you today.
Gosh.
You said you were never getting married and you were never having kids. And then I'm like, well, let me do this for somebody else too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So what would be a couple more questions, and we'll kind of wrap this up here. Was there one or two things that obviously that were going into it, you probably didn't know a lot of things that you were just surprised with, but anything that's like, wow, I really did not know that this was going to be part of the process?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on the med schedule being
the meds,
that.
yeah.
And the reason for that was I specifically remember saying to Jesse, why do they have to send me all these meds to do? Why do I have to like inject all this stuff if I get pregnant so easily? And she was like, well, and she's so good. She's not like, she was so good. She's like, you know, you are making it a comfy, cozy place for a baby already. Like they're putting a 5-day-old embryo in. And so your space needs to be 5 days pregnant, basically. And I was like, oh. And I'm not walking around like that.
That's true. Something that you wouldn't think about just naturally being able to conceive. It's like your body, your hormones are prepping for it, and it's wild what our bodies can do, right? So that makes so much sense.
And I did not know. I was like,
right, because you're like, okay, you just insert it inside of me, great. So what would you tell somebody who is potentially interested in becoming a surrogate? Like, what pieces of advice would you give to someone who is interested?
Honestly, do it. I say do it. And the reason I say do it is because it is a blip of your life to change someone's forever. It's a blip. So I would say start to finish 1 year with contract and all of the other, you know, just medical clearance to. So
a year of your life and
to change someone's for literally ever.
That is super selfless to say. Honestly, I don't know if I could do that because I just think like, oh my God, every month how crazy my hormones get.
I get it,
and then to do that, I mean, again, it's beyond a beautiful thing to do for someone. And I love that that's truly your why and your reasoning behind why you do this. Because as a woman too, it's like our bodies get ruined, you know, and it's just like, okay, like, I don't know, your stretch marks or this or that. And for some people who that matters more for, just in general, people don't love being pregnant. You know, you hear that as often. So can we give a shout out to Jessie if people are interested in looking into it? Could you share her business and how they can find her too?
Yeah, so Jessie is at Pink and Blue Surrogacy in Waterloo, Wisconsin.
Waterloo, okay.
So you can look up her website, and she's got contact information on there.
That's a cute business name too. I really like that.
Yeah, and she truly is so knowledgeable and really just such a great support system through a process that can be so difficult for both sides. And especially I think as a first-time surrogate, right? It's all new, and it's kind of like, well, I've been pregnant and I've had a baby, but IVF is a totally different piece. And then to be so supportive of the families is, I mean, that's a huge, what an amazing person to be like taking on all of that. So the family that I'm caring for now, it's their first.
Okay.
And I've never cared for a first-time family.
So this is a whole new experience.
Yeah, every family's been so special, every journey, every experience. There's something about becoming a first-time parent that is unlike anything. So I was like, wait, they're first-time parent. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes.
Oh,
this is amazing.
But
again,
really
Jessie
cool.
is so good at matching that I was like, of course I trust her judgment.
So now you trust,
but then to find that out, I was like, I like totally want to. I just think it's so special and even more.
Can you share if the couple is same-sex couple?
Yes,
two dads.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So that's really special.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I actually had to go out to DC for transfer, and we had dinner the night before transfer together. And it was like we knew each other from like kindergarten even. It was such like the best night ever. I was like, I just want to keep hanging. Like, let's go out now. Like, let's just keep hanging.
Well, that's a great connection to
so
be able
good.
To have,
And they'll check in, you know, they're texting me, how you feeling? They'll even text me about the weather or, you know, how was the holiday weekend or whatever it is. They're just checking in, you know, with things, and I'll send them stuff too. But oftentimes they're asking how I'm feeling, like.
Yeah, right. They just, as much as you can be part of that and just feel like, okay, she's doing good. You know, that makes us feel good because they probably just have the same amount of anxiety as, you know, of anyone else. And it's hard. I think the distance probably makes it harder too. Do they ever come and visit? Like, would they come out like during your pregnancy?
They were thinking about coming for the 20-week if work allowed it, you know. But that's actually a really good point, and that's something that I have actually talked to a few people about, that I can't imagine what it's like to not be in control, to have to fully trust someone with something so precious,
right?
And just like
even with the contract in place, even with all that, it's just, I don't know.
It's a lot to like put in someone
day to day, a whole 9 months of every little thing,
especially if you're not nearby. But either way, still, you know, to trust and you are out of control there. And I just I'm like, that's amazing of them to choose me first of all, and then to trust me with something like so amazing. And yeah,
Well,
I'm super grateful for that.
Yes, but you're amazing, Courtney. That is just truly a gift. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this. I've always been so fascinated. So I just selfishly wanted to ask you all these questions that in our hour appointments, we sometimes chat about all the other things. So thank you for coming on the Brow Therapy podcast and being patient with me as I'm learning all this stuff too. And I can't wait for people to hear this episode and just such an amazing, selfless thing that you have done 4 times now.
Yeah.
And maybe after all this, we'll have you come back on to talk about how this past time has gone. So
With champagne. Or
yes.
something.
Oh my God. Absolutely. We'll do your brows. Maybe we'll do your brows on camera, drink some champagne after. So the beauty of it, I was just staring at your brows the whole time. They look fabulous. So yes, thank you so much. And yeah, absolutely. This is so fun. You're a natural at this too.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you
Hey,
should.
paparazzi.
Yeah. What up, y'all? Thank you,
I love
girly.
it.
This is
Yeah.
awesome. Just to kind of tap your mic real quick. Okay, perfect. Hello. Good. Let me record on here. There we go. Just kidding. You look great. Stay right there for a second. I just want to do. My hair was so nice and floofed, and now it's all flat.
I think it looked great.
I'm gonna take my shoes out. Okay. Yeah, let's take them off. Get nice and cozy.
I'm so cool because we're actually really like rolled.
That's so. And Amanda, she's a chef.
Yes, so it was like all the
I didn't
cliches
know
and
that,
all that,
dude. She's amazing. Does
Yeah.
she still work as an esthetician, or did she stop
I
that?
think so. Yeah, I think that
She
she's
was-
just doing this.
okay.
Well, I don't even just, but she's also
yeah.
teaching classes too. And
Where?
what's it called? Surrogacy or whatever.
Oh
Is that what it is?
my God.
She's teaching. What does she do?
Dude,
2
she's
classes
just
or
like so
something?
multifaceted.
I
It's
know.
pretty
I know.
amazing. And then is she still working at Capitol Grow?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a few actually. Yeah, 3.
She's
of the
always
people that were there were Capital Grow.
been like
Yeah.
this. Wow.
I know.
That's so
All over.
awesome. Okay.
Just the people, you know.
Oh,
They're not.
what?
Oh,
You're so funny. No, girly. I'm gonna see if I can get
so it was
this.
delicious, and you like don't want to stop. Then you're like, oh, so good. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the Brow Therapy podcast. I hope you found some inspiration and insight along the way. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Follow us on social media at the Brow Therapy podcast for more updates, behind the scenes content, and all of the latest. Until next time, besties, keep growing and keep showing up as your best self.